Let's have a strong start. See the Earth and its atmosphere? Yeah, that's not actually a planet. It's a flat circle way off in the distance, super cheap, and from the play area it totally sells it. And yes, the Sun? Same deal. Flat Earth confirmed. The lunar surface? Not actually the Moon. It's from an asset pack called Rural Australia, with all the vegetation stripped out and the colors desaturated. The draw distance on the Moon from far away, it's not even lit. It's the same model repeated several times with the shadows baked directly into the texture. That's why they all face the same direction. If you rotated it, the baked shadows would give the whole trick away. That slime tank you always see in the background, up close it's the real thing, but from far away it's just a flat image of the tank slapped right there. Honestly, the whole game is full of little tricks like this. I love placing landmarks you can see from a distance that later turn out to be actual levels you're going to explore. Here's what this area looks when you are actually playing it, and here's the same area seen from the distance, in two different levels. So let's go back to the very beginning. Top games are having a golden age right now, but there's a whole generation of players who only know what's called friends-love games. That's exactly why I think together Moonscape needs to exist. And look, there's nothing wrong with games like Repo, Pig or Are We There Yet? And the Roblox Rainbow Islands... okay, I do have a problem with that. Ugh. But now that the co-op games are this popular, where are the co-op games with tight, carefully designed linear levels? That's where together Moonscape comes in. This is a very straightforward game. I think it's the most honest trailer I've ever made, because the game is exactly what you see in the trailer. Two astronauts trying to escape the moon, traveling through different locations with really carefully crafted level design, puzzles and challenges, but also plenty of room for humor. A lot of room for humor. So yeah, if you're into game development, stick around, because you're going to see how all of this was built from scratch, how I optimized Unreal Engine 5 to run on a toaster, the design philosophy, the playtest, the voice acting headaches, the painful journey of writing the script, and, well, how very possibly, if this game doesn't do at least reasonably well, it might be the end of my 15-year-old career as a game developer forever. I have to come clean about something. This isn't my first co-op project. Over 17 years ago, when I still had hair and was in college, I released Warcelona for Left 4 Dead 2. Funnily enough, it's still my most successful project to date, with millions of downloads, even though I've never seen a single cent from it since it's a free mod. But it always left me with an unfinished business sensation. I wanted to make co-op games, but honestly, I didn't know how. Making online co-op games is incredibly hard, or rather, it's hard if you want to do it right. I simply didn't have the technical knowledge, or honestly, the balls, to face the final boss of game development, the Netcode. I have shipped 4 horror games back to back, and I wanted to explore new genres, but I had no idea which direction to go, so I did what any sane person would do. I started a hyper niche game dev podcast that nobody would watch, to inspire other devs and myself. That's where I met 2 people who genuinely shaped what came next, David Lozano and Kiko Martinez. David absolutely crushed it with the co-op game Bread and Fred. The others have a really pragmatic approach to making puzzle games that work well for them for years. No big marketing push needed. So I thought, that's it. The secret to success without going viral is making a co-op puzzle game. And yes, I know that We Were Here series exists. I've played them all and I genuinely love most of them. You should too, but personally I prefer games with less code entering and more level exploration. Less from the room, more open-ended. That's the seed of Together, Moonscape. Well, that and this video by Juniper Dev, go follow her, she's incredible. In the video, she talked about how 36% of Steam sales come from co-op games, while those games only make up to 6% of all titles in the platform. Developing a co-op game was looking like a solid bet to me. Development was absolute chaos. Weeks just to get 2 players connected in any form and moving around the same grey world without bugs. Designing Netcode is brutally hard for one very simple reason. You don't need to understand every system to make a simple single-player game. But with Netcode, until you understand all of it, you can even make a simple game work. You either get it completely or things just break. There's no middle ground. So you can imagine how things went at first. fires everywhere, bugs everywhere, and a whole lot of frustration. Eventually, with a lot of help from my Twitch and YouTube community, yes, I developed all my games live on stream, this one included, the game slowly started coming together. Physical objects you could pick up and down, a multiplayer interaction system, animations, respawns. At that stage, I just need to test a couple of design concepts to validate the whole idea. I designed 3 puzzles, fairly complex ones, more mid-game level than tutorial, and run playtests at the university where I work, with students, just to see if the whole thing actually held up. Yeah, everything was grey and ugly, but when the players weren't hitting progress blocking bugs, they were having fun. A lot of fun. In fact, watching those playtests, I saw players having more fun than I've ever seen anyone have with any of my games in 15 years. Single-player games get played like this, but top games get played laughing and messing around with someone you actually care about. Those playtests validated the whole project. It made sense to build a full game around this. It didn't even have a name yet, but I already knew I was going to spend years making Together Moonscape. Oh, and those 3 puzzles? They are still in the game, much improved, but they are in there. This one right here was the very first one ever designed, the primordial puzzle of the whole game. Of course, everything was going smoothly until it wasn't. Deep into designing the tutorial and early levels, another developer suggested I completely rethink the netcode. At this stage, what possible reason could there be? Okay, let's get a bit technical, but here's the core idea. To connect 2 players, you need a reliable relay to pass information between them. For example, Steam. That's how the game was working. But what happens if you want crossplay with consoles? Well, Steam's connection protocol only works on Steam. But there's something that saves us here. Fortnite. And I'm not kidding. Credit where credit is due. There's plenty to criticize about Unreal Engine 5, and yes, we will get into that. But you have to give Epic Games credits for building an excellent cross-platform netcode system for Fortnite, which Tim Sweeney then made available to everyone for free. And not just Unreal Engine 5, in any engine. It's more complex than using Steam directly, but it works without extra logins and supports crossplay between Steam, consoles, and mobile. And on top of that, it handles invites, text, and voice chat. The whole thing. Incredible. But if implementing Steam was hard, this was a whole other level. And as a player, you don't even notice. When you launch the game on Steam or console, it's already connecting you to the Epic Online services in the background. No extra login, nothing. You open the game and it just works. That complexity, of course, makes everything harder on the dev side, but once again, thanks to my community and people like Irfael, we got there. And that kicked off the next goal: ship a demo as fast as possible. The idea was simple: give players a small slice of the game with a variety of different ideas and see what landed. No trick to it, just heads down and work. Months and months of development, puzzles, levels, lighting, visual and audio feedback, playtest, and yes, my community constantly tempting me to add new features, like the long-forgotten split-screen mode. The game wasn't originally designed for local co-op, but it was possible and it didn't break the design, so it meant putting in a lot of hours on a split screen. And yes, split screen in 2026, yes, I'm old and I love split screen. Slowly, September arrived, and the demo had to launch. First, the Steam page, which honestly didn't get much traction. The trailer was a bit rough, just something to have up there. But then the demo launched, and holy shit, the feedback was genuinely great and wishlists were climbing fast. Even after the initial boost Steam gives to all demos, the wishlist didn't drop back to zero. And that wasn't all. I've been part of plenty Steam Next Fest before, with basically nothing to show for it, but this one was very different. It popped off. More than anything I've ever had at a Next Fest. And it did it without going viral anywhere. Players were finding the game organically on Steam and actually enjoy it. And after Next Fest ended, the wishlist held. Seemed pretty red, right? Well, now it's time to talk about one of the 2 elephants in the room. Yes, Together Moonscape is made in Unreal Engine 5. No, the game doesn't run badly. Not at all. In fact, a lot of the feedback from the demo was that the game runs great for how good it looks, especially given its build in Unreal Engine 5. Black magic? Nah, just old dog game developer tricks. UE5 is actually two things at once. First, it's the engine itself, how it handles lighting, geometry rendering, and so on. And as of when this video comes out, everyone is complaining about this side of it, players and devs alike. Lumen, Nanite, and other flagship technologies just don't really work the way they are supposed to do. Some of that blame falls on developers, sure, but in my humble opinion, this technology has fundamental, unsolvable problems at its core. However, Unreal Engine 5 is also an absolutely fantastic set of development tools. The visual scripting editor, Blueprints, is great. The modeling and level design tools are excellent. The material editor is fantastic. So now that we understand Unreal Engine 5 is both an engine and a dev toolkit, for this game I only used the tools, no Lumen, no Nanite. Instead, I modified UE5 to work as closely as possible to how lighting working in UE4 and Source 2 games like Half-Life Alyx. Rather than using Lumen, Nanite, and other expensive technologies, I use light maps, a technique that has existed since forever, where you pre-calculate lighting and bake it into textures for static objects. But light map baking has also improved massively, and now you can bake with your GPU instead of your slower CPU. On top of that, I use other classic techniques, pre-calculated visibility, dynamic lighting with cascade shadows, distance fields and capsule shadows for characters and soft shadows on dynamic objects, and my personal favorite, volumetric light maps for non-static objects, from characters to physical props. See all those little spheres floating around? Instead of pre-calculating per pixel with ray tracing or path tracing, dynamic objects use the new sphere data to determine how they are lit. Super cheap, and the results are excellent. And yes, through the entirety of the development, I've been testing the game on a Steam Deck. It runs at 60 frames per second at native resolution, and it also runs fine on fairly modest PCs. Slowly, working 10 hours a day and running constant playtests, the final game started to take shape, level by level. After watching gameplay sessions and playtests from the demo, I tried to put time into building more of what players actually enjoyed. And surprisingly, it basically comes down to three things: more mechanics involving weapons and slimes, fewer code entry puzzles, and a lot more of level design, creative puzzles, and verticality. And honestly, those are the things I enjoy making the most, so yeah, perfect match. So let's talk about the design of Together Moonscape. Every puzzle and challenge in this game was designed for exactly 2 players. They wouldn't work with 3, and they'll be impossible with 1. Well, unless you are a speedrunner. Look what one of the players managed to pull off.
Okay. Just need to pick it up. Pick it up right away. Yes.
The game is structured as a journey. You need to reach a facility to escape, and every level connects to the next. The trip is continuous. For example, this is what you see once you get out of the broken shelter at the start. See that dome in the distance? You are going to go there. And it's like that for every single part of the journey. It's also a game with a lot of variety. Whenever a concept comes back, like the electricity pipe, it returns with a new twist. But there are also unique one-off puzzles that never repeat, just to keep surprising the player, like the giant communication antenna section, the slime tank puzzle, and a couple more surprises. And to close out this section, let me talk about the number one reason cited in divorce paper after playing co-op games: platforming. How many times has one of the players had to wait while the other struggled through a platforming section because they're just not good at it? Well, Together Moonscape has platforming, yes, but it's been very carefully calibrated to be accessible and never become a major frustration. No pixel-perfect platforming sections anywhere. Put the divorce papers away, please. And hey, not great with a particular gadget? Don't sweat it. You can swap gadgets with your partner at almost any point in the game. You're never locked into a build. I'm going to be honest. I think I'm genuinely bad at narrative. Looking back at my past projects, the storytelling has always been either non-existent, pretentious, or way too opaque. I've never set out to make narrative-driven games, but hey, it's one of those things I really wanted to improve at. I won't spoil anything, but once I was building out the full game, just having a glitchy little robot talking at you wasn't enough. The whole thing needed a proper narrative arc. Players were asking for it, and honestly, I had no idea how the game was going to end, or what role the story could actually play, but something had to be done. With help from the community, we completely reworked the narrative, and arrived at Moontella, the fictional company with facilities on the Moon Fishers, lunar workers who work for Moontella, inspired by a local Catalan legend from my hometown. And above all of that, Luna, the voice you hear through the game, who is now a full character with her own narrative arc. Okay, I have to stop here. Yes, I know what you're thinking. GLaDOS, Portal. That's not exactly working in my favor. If you are going into this game expecting the narrative of Portal 3, you're going to write me one hell of a negative review. Obviously, I can't compete solo with Portal and Valve's entire narrative team, so the story takes a different turn. I don't want to spoil it, but yes, the narrative is fully aware that GLaDOS is an iconic character, and it deliberately goes somewhere else. In fact, in a lot of playtests, the narrative worked especially well because players were expecting a GLaDOS-type character, and she didn't end up like one. All that said, it still wasn't working. 3 months before launch, what the hell? Not because Luna was annoying to listen to, but plenty of players just weren't paying attention to her. Time for some real self-criticism. Luna is a robot, so I decided to use an artificial intelligence voice for her. Makes sense. She should sound robotic, right? Plus, using AI voices had another practical advantage. If I want to change a line, I don't have to go back to a voice actress, deal with the scheduling, contracts, all of that. Quick, flexible, great for rapid development. And yes, right there, that was a problem. I can never give a character the emotional depth and richness that a real human can. Great for prototyping and testing, but no. Together, Moonscape uses no generative AI in any kind, and that includes the voices. It was a risky bet, because I've never worked with voice actors before and had no idea what it would even cost, but hey, I work alone, but I'm always surrounded by genuinely wonderful people who are willing to help. So I started asking around, first to Enrique Colinet, a friend, a mentor, and yes, the guy responsible for placing so many spikes in Blasphemous. Perdóname, Enrique. Turns out, Enrique isn't just a brilliant game developer, he's also a voice director, and he handled all the voice work for Blasphemous 1 and 2. And also, completely by chance, my partner happened to know a voice actress, Patricia Arcos. Remember her name because it matters. After a couple of small dramas in the English casting, I ended up working with Patricia Arcos for Spanish and Catalan, and then she introduced me to an American friend of hers for English, Elizabeth Agulló. But since Spanish is my native language, we wanted to lock in all the Spanish recording with Patricia before touching the English. And honestly, we got off to a rocky start. Patricia was a self-described video game hater. When I first texted her and said hello, one of the first things she told me was something like, "Hey, lovely to meet you. I've never done video game dubbing and I'm doing this because you're paying me. But just so you know, I genuinely dislike video games because my son and my husband are playing some League of whatever and some Fortnite something all day. Great, off to a flying start." But Patricia is a professional. You can dislike something and still do excellent work. So that's exactly what we did. And then something kind of magical happened. I gave her a raw overview of the character, though honestly I'm not sure she was hanging on every word. It was when she actually started recording line by line that she started telling me she was falling in love with the character, that she had no idea games could be this. She got so into working on Luna that we started running into a different kind of problem. I originally asked her for 3 takes per line, one with a standard delivery and 2 more creative ones. Instead, she was giving me between 5 and 8 takes. The results? I can genuinely say that Patricia didn't just elevate Luna, she elevated her massively. I knew a human would do better than an artificial intelligence voice, but I didn't expect the character to grow this much. And yes, for the English recording, we used Patricia's chosen take as a reference, and oh boy, I couldn't be happier with Elizabeth's work either. What an absolute pair of legends. I could honestly keep talking about the narrative and more game dev tricks, like Pavlovian conditioning or active narrative zones, but even though I'd love to, that would mean getting into spoiler territory, and that would rain a lot of surprises. So you will have to experience it in the game, and then you can ask me anything you want on Steam or whatever else. And so here we are. There's a moment after all the work when the game you had in your head just appears in your hands. The game is finally ready to launch on Steam. And I'm sorry, but I have to get a little sentimental here. there's a real chance this might be my last game. In 15 years as a developer, I've never had a viral hit, but I do consider myself successful. How? To me, success means selling enough with one game to fund the next one. I've managed that every single time, but the industry feels off right now. Like so many other devs, I'm seeing a significant drop in sales across all my older games. Players are shifting, moving to platforms like Roblox and Fortnite instead of buying indie games. It's rough. We're in an industry where doing everything right still might not be enough to survive. And I will be self-critical here. I've made games in the past that were too experimental. I kept switching genres, and obviously, someone who bought Coral isn't automatically going to pick up Horror Tales the Wine. I haven't been building a loyal audience until now. I can tell you one thing for certain. If this game does well, I'm absolutely making more co-op games. In fact, since I already have the netcode figured out for the next one, it should move a lot faster. And I have a ton of ideas I want to explore after Together Moonscape. New weapons, more player separation, more complex mechanics. Did someone say Mars? However, if I do have to stop making games, there's a plan B. I teach at the university, and I have 70,000 students across my Unreal Engine courses. I also sell programming assets for Unreal Engine that help other developers reach their goals much faster. Right now, I spend about 20% of my time on that and 80% of my time making games. If this doesn't go well, that ratio flips. I genuinely love helping other developers, and it motivates me just as much. But not everything is grim. If this has to be my last game, I'm going out proud. Not just proud, extremely proud. I've given everything to Together Moonscape, and compared to anything I've done before, it's by far my most complete and most solid work. If I'm going to take a hard hit and have my game dev career end here, I'm glad it's ending with this. And that's it. I'm recording this documentary right before the game launches, so I genuinely have no idea how it's going to go. All I know is I hate doing marketing, and I'm not counting on going viral, but I hope, and I really, truly hope, that if you play this game, you enjoy it with someone you care about as much as I enjoyed making it. Take care, and a big, big hug to you too.